uh, show how to do one of the problems in Lab 2, namely problem P2.22. Now the tricky thing about P.22, or the novel thing about it in any case, is that it is a graphics program. And for that reason we're going to need to include additional files. Now we're not going to, these are the files that are relevant for Linux. We're going to actually include these two files, but we'll need to include alternative versions of these two files. So let's start up Visual Studio and solve this problem. So what I'm going to do here is create a new project. So what I'll do here is create a new project, and also I'm going to review how to create non-graphical projects, because actually I don't have my my original repository anymore. I need to create that. So I'm going to create a project to hold the solution to P_1. Once again, this is something that you've already done, but just to review. And this will be instructive because we can see the differences between how to create a project for the console and how to create a graphics project that runs it within a window. So the project name is P11. The default selection here is Win32. We want a console application. The solution name will be CSE 201. Most likely you don't need to do that. This is already created. And also you don't need to do add to subversion, or perhaps you do actually. But so this would be to create a project to solve P1.1. And let's see, there is a lot to choose from here. And I'm going to select here. Once again, this is something you've already done. And I will submit that. No log message. Alright, that's been created. Just get rid of those. Now let's assume that this has been done already. Now what we're going to do is create another project, and this project will be called P2_22. And this is not a console application. This project type is a Win32 project. And I'll click next here. This will be an empty project. I'll delete these virtual folders. And let's go ahead and create a file. So let's add a new item. We'll call this main.cpp. CPP is added automatically. Now for this we need to create a function. I believe it's returns a void, and it's called ccc_win_main. I'll need to check on that. Also, there's a header file that we need to include, and we'll have to check on that as well. Let's just save that for now. Now, to solve this problem, we will need to add some files that are provided by the textbook author. On this web page, under the instructions section, I show a list of files that are needed on Linux. If you're working on Linux, the list is slightly different when you're working on Windows. I created the list just now, and this is the list of files that you need to work under Windows. So to get these, you need to go to the textbook author's website and download a zip file that contains the source code for the book. So once you get that zip file and unpack it, you'll see that you get these folders, and then there's a folder called CCC files, and in here there are the files that you need. And for a graphics program created in Windows in the manner that we're doing, we need the following files: CCC, msw.cpp.h, CCC, shape.cpp, and shape.h. We need these 4 files. So I'm going to copy these, and let's paste those into the project that we just created. So under CSE 201, and then there's a project P2.22, and as you can see, here's our main.cpp. Also, here's a project file. Let's paste in here. And now we come back to Visual Studio, and then I can right click on the project and select Add. Here it is, Add Existing Item. And I'm going to hold down the Control key and left click on these items that I want to add. I don't need to add these, they're already in there. There we have it. There's another change that we need to do. We have to right click on the project folder and then scroll down to Properties, and under General we need to make this change. For the field character set, by default it's set to use Unicode character set. We need to change that to not set. That'll hit OK on that. And so now I can see the header file that we need. We need this file here. It's called CCC underscore msw.h. So in here, let's create a point P, and you can see that Visual Studio is providing some helpful information that reassures us that we've got the syntax right, and also tells us what the arguments are for this particular constructor that we're invoking. Let's create a point at the origin, 0, 0, and then let's create a circle. Circle C. I'll call it circle. And it takes a point P and a radius, say 4.0. And now we need to render the circles. So we use, trying to remember, I think it's CWin, the output operator. We render the circle. Alright. Let's see if that builds. See if we're lucky. I'm going to press F7. Getting an error on P11. Both failed. First thing I want to do is get rid of the error on P11. That's I need to add a file. So let's just take care of that really quickly. You won't need to do this. You will have already created P11 in your solution. Just get this out of the way quickly. So I'll just create a main.cpp, and this is the actually I don't even need that. I just need the entry point main here, and that'll be an int argc char pointer args brackets, and that's it. Try that. Let's see if that helps. Yeah, now one succeeded, so we took care of that. We don't need that anymore. Let's look at the other failure. So error right there, and it's related to this file right there. Unresolved external symbol CCC win made void. And if you look at that, you see that this, in other words, this is a linkage error actually, and it's complaining about this object file, and I can see that it looks like a linkage error. Actually, it comes right after linking, so compiling has succeeded and linking is failing, and it's saying that it can't find this function. It cannot find a definition of this function, and it needs that function. And if you look in our code, we have in fact defined CCC win main. The problem is the function it is looking for returns an int, but we're returning a void, so we need to change that to an int. Let's see if that builds. And we still have a failure, and here it is, error. CCC win main must return a value. Let's do it here. So it's return 0. Try to build again, and 1 succeeded and 1 is up to date. Good, so we're there, and let's try to run it. I'm going to set this project as the startup project just to make it easier, and I'll press F5 to run, and nothing is running. So let's see, I'm going to start debugging. It says F5 there. There's the circle. Alright, that's how to create a graphics, to solve a graphics programming problem in this class. I'm not sure it's the problem P22 that we actually need to solve. Let me check that very quickly. Actually, in this problem we have to draw a face. So we would need to add some changes here. So we have a we'll have to draw some eyes. We could do it like this. Let's create another circle. We'll call it something like the left eye, and we'll need to give it a new point. Or what we can do is, I believe the point has a move function. Let's move it up by 2 units, and let's move it left by 2 units, and see where that puts us. Then we'll draw the eye at that new location, and we'll make the eye, say, 0.7 units large, or give it a radius of 0.7 units. So I'm going to build, and whoops, this is my F5, that's the problem, that thing pops up. Alright, so run debugging here, and nothing is happening. That's because we did not output the eye. So let's output the eye, the left eye. And so first we output the circle, and then I'll do it like this, it's easier to look at. Then we'll output the left eye. That's the left eye. There we go. Now that is not the right place for it. So y should be positive and x should be negative. So I got the wrong orientation there. So x needs to be negative, y should be positive. I'll make the outer circle a little larger as well. Let's take a look at that. So as you can see, we can also draw another circle here, draw a line, and then we'll have our face. So to draw the line, just quickly, there's another a class called line, and that will be that's the mouth. And let's look how convenient that is to work in Visual Studio. You would just it gives a hint of what needs to go in there. So we need a starting point and an ending point. So those are points. Rather than defining those externally, we can actually invoke the constructors right inside here. So the first point will be, say, at x value of -2 and a y value of -1. Let's just try that. And for the other point, we'll just make it symmetric. We'll do an x value of 2 and a y value of -1. That shouldn't be symmetric, so there we go. We need to output the mouth as well. Let's go ahead and add that. Build. Run. Pretty close. We're getting there. Now we need the right eye. Let's go ahead and actually what we could do is the left eye could be moved to get to the right eye. Alright, we could do it like that. Right, so we could do something like this. After we output the left eye, we could do the following. We could move the left eye by some positive amount, something like 2. We could play with that, and then we would output the left eye. Oops, that should be left eye. And there's a problem with doing this, and I want to explain it in a second here. So the move function does not take one argument. What does the move function take? It actually takes 2 there, right? So that should be a change in y. Let's build that and run it. So this should be 4. Go ahead and run that. There it is. Now the problem is the code is difficult to read. It's, what we do is we call it a left eye, and then when we render it at this point in the code, look, it's still called left eye, but it's really the right eye. So although the program works, it works with the machine. The machine doesn't care what we call it, but it doesn't work for the human reader. It's too hard to understand the code. So here's a design which is better. And there's different variations on this, but certainly what we have right now is not very good. Let's make this easier to understand. Let's actually go ahead and create, we could call it an eye, and then render just the eye. That would be one improvement. Let's do that improvement first. Instead of calling it left eye, we can go back here and say, well, we're going to use it for both eyes. Let's call it just eye. I'm going to use lowercase e for that. And this is an incremental improvement. So, and then what we could do is, let's just see, or build that. It's left eye is undeclared. Here it is. So just change that. This is an incremental improvement. Still runs, but once again, it's a little hard. We can't. This is the left eye. This is the right eye. So what we might be tempted to do here is to put in a comment. This is the left eye, and this is the right eye. But well, that does add clarity, but it's actually better to minimize your comments, because a comment is extra, so you have to read the code anyway, and then if the code is not self-documenting, that means you have to spend the extra energy to read the comments as well. Sometimes comments are necessary, but sometimes in this case they're not necessary. What we could do here is we could declare this as a left eye and then create a right eye. Let's also create a right eye. And let's go ahead and move. Yeah, actually, I don't like moving this as well. Let's go ahead and well, let's move it an amount of 4, 0 in the x directions. We'll fix that as well. That's also a problem. So here is the right eye, and now we can first render the left eye, then render the right eye. Build that. See if we got it right. Eye is undeclared. We no longer need to call move. Let's build that. And then I'll run it. Looks good. Of course, as you see this, look at this. The variable name is left eye. We don't need this comment anymore. We don't need this note that that is in fact the left eye, that this is the right eye. Here's another area I think that's confusing that could also be improved here. This, we're using a point and then we're moving it. This to me is also very confusing. It doesn't help me read the code. Here's an approach that I would prefer. Let's center the circle at 0, 0. So I'm going to get rid of that, the definition of P itself, and just pass in the location inside the circle constructor. And then this is, take this one out. Well, before I take it out, let's put this in here. And this is -2 and 2, so I'm just going to code that right in there. So that gives a location for the left eye. You know, at this point, it could be debated what is easier to read and thus easier to maintain. So that's a point. You can only go so far with this. Is this in fact easier to read and understand? You know, before we had a point that we moved around. We passed that point into the circle constructors. There's a certain appeal to that. This is another alternative. Let's see if that still runs correctly. There we go. In my opinion, this is easier. So as you can see, I have the solution to the problem, but I wasn't satisfied with it yet. I still wanted to go farther. I wanted to make the code not just run, but I wanted the code to be readable and thus more easily maintained.